Yeah, they see me on top and they get mad cause they can't top me. Got me running up the skull when they even matter cause they can't stop me. Yeah, they see them trying to watch me and they trying to copy and it's looking sloppy. Yeah, we about to get it popping, talking non-stop. Can I get a copy? Yeah, you see me on top and they getting mad cause they can't top me. Got me running up the skull when they... Make money, make money, make money, then you take money, take money, take money.
Hello and welcome back to KSB TV YouTube channel. I got WaLLrus in the green room getting me all hype. I see him enjoying my intro music. I love it. If you guys want to check out my intro music, you guys know that my husband, BlaKC Crypto, he makes all of my music, all of his music that I just enjoy bumping from time to time. So go give him a like over on his channel, BlaKC Crypto. There's some links in the descriptions to make it easier for you to find those music. So thank you guys for joining me today. I see we got Freddie in the chat already. Hey, Freddie, how's it going? I'm sure a couple more people will be flowing in pretty soon here. So I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to go and share the stream on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook, wherever your preferred platform is. Starting my learning journey, continuing my learning journey, not even starting anymore. We are like deep into this. As you guys know, I ordered a Trezor wallet. Tomorrow, I'm supposed to be setting it up with Abit. I listened to the advice of Papa B. I did not buy it from Amazon. And because of that, it is not here yet. I wanted so badly just to get my 2-day ship on and have it here. But we went ahead and obeyed the guidance of our security expert, Papa B. We ordered it off of Trezor.io on Saturday. According to my tracking information, it is supposed to be here tomorrow. So hopefully we can still do our setup on time. If not, we'll just push it back a little bit so that I can wait for it to come in the mail. So today's topic is all about stable coins, right? You guys know that I've been trying to figure out how I want to DCA into my next wallet. Am I going to buy Ethereum and just hold that until I have stacked up enough to be able to make a purchase? Should I, go into some kind of stable coin like USDC, or I'm sure there's some other options that our guest is going to share with us today. So that's what today's topic is all about. So I am not the expert. I am about to bring up the expert. But before I do, let me give you guys just a little introduction. He goes by WaLLrus online. I met him for the first time while we were on the 5555 tour. And surprisingly, normally, when you guys have these like really smart, educated dudes that are in these chat rooms, always spitting alpha, you're like, oh, just another nerd. Let me tell you guys, this guy is far from it. I had the most fun on the entire tour with this guy at a Steve Aoki concert. So this dude is the best of both worlds. He is cool, casual, calm, and collective, and also major brain, big brain alpha. So I won't wait any longer. Here he is, WaLLrus. How you doing, bro?
What's going on? That was almost as good an intro as you, man. I hadn't heard that new intro. That's fire. That was killer. I was in here jamming.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I gotta keep my husband's music on rotation. He's always been some heavy fire. So
absolutely.
So how you been?
Oh, not as good as that Steve Aoki night. Let me tell you, that was a fun one, man. We had a couple of hex tables and everyone was lined out. Just a quick little backstory on how fun that was. So I had went and hung out with everybody at the Dallas event, and they were coming down to Austin, and my girl was down here. She didn't get a chance to make it up to Dallas. So everyone was coming down and we were super excited. And she was like, hey, the Steve Aoki concert's that night. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I was like, I think the tour will be over by then. I think, the event. She was like, we should get a table. And I was like, yeah, we should get a table. We'll get a table. We'll go snag them up. They'll be so excited. So we grab a table, go out to the conference, grab Abe and everybody. And they're like, oh, we got a table too. And I was like, oh, this is a problem. So then it ends up being 30, 40 Hexicans deep, 2 tables. And yeah, we absolutely had a blast. What a fun night. What
I
a
think
fun
by the
night.
end of that night, we end up having like 3 or 4 tables. It got
Yep.
crazy. Like, I don't know how it happened. It was just perfect, situation. You had a table, another Hexican had a table, and then he was able to talk somebody else into giving them theirs. Like, we were just that whole side we just had lit.
Oh man, a couple of us got hit with the birthday cake. People sitting on shoulders. It was a fun time. The Hexicans showed out real strong. What a great one! What a great one!
Yes, absolutely. I see Avid Hex in the chat.
Hey,
What is he saying? Aoki was so fun. Yes, we had multiple tables, 3x'd it.
yep,
Absolutely.
unplanned. No one else knew about the other tables. We all were just like, oh, let's grab a table and put on, and then everybody just mobbed. It was so fun.
Yeah, but that's that Hexican spirit though. Like, I mean, we enjoy each other's company. It goes so far beyond just liking a financial product, right?
Mhm.
Or they say shared interest, but it's deeper than that. It's like belief in a set of beliefs that we all kind of gravitate towards that makes our company together that much more enjoyable.
It absolutely is. There's a lot of selflessness. Obviously, yourself and the rest of that team. I try to follow that same ethos. We do a lot that we always hope eventually pumps price and is very beneficial for our bags. But we could probably make 80%, 90% of the returns. You assume kind of whatever we did with way less than half the work. We could just buy the product and go hang out. But that's
Yeah.
not what we do. Just it's so enjoyable to be around everyone else. When I was on Orbit, part of his intro, I'll literally never forget when the first time I met Hex is the Way, and he wins, and he's like, and he brings up his 2 boys, and he's like, well, now that there's a stake on each chain, I'll have one for each boy, and just, I mean, that stuff you just never forget. I mean, even when people, especially once you've had those times to shake people's hands and meet everybody, you have such a different view of like small interactions on Twitter. So if me and Hex is the Way, ever say something that can make rub each other wrong online, we're like, oh yeah, I shook that guy's hand. I know he's okay. And we just have such a camaraderie. It's so powerful. It's amazing. I love it. I really do. It means so much, and that's the reason I try to do so much. And the gratitude from the community is incredible. So
Absolutely.
special.
And we see it 100%. I know that when we did have our tour and our workshop event, I believe, like you said, in Dallas, you guys just blew me away, right? Because we go through this whole tour and we're giving away Hex. Maybe at one stop somebody brings stickers or somebody brings pins, but you and the How to Post team, you guys showed up with like a huge box of t-shirts, like to give away to everybody, and it just speaks to that selflessness, right? That I could just promote Hex on my own. I could just buy my own merch. But the idea of wanting to freely give it away to promote the mission, to promote the brand.
J Money flew down just to come hang out.
Yeah.
He literally came up from California just for the event, just to come shake everyone's hands and all that kind of good stuff, hang out, all that. He didn't even know about the concert. We just drug him to Aoki. He was like, we're doing what?
Yeah.
He just came down for the tour to meet everybody. So
coming all the way from California. I had no idea while we were there that he was, that people all the time, every stop, you assume that it's just a bunch of locals, but it's people coming from like all over to come and hang out.
Coffee's the same way. Coffee's not from Austin. He came down just to hang out.
Yeah. No, we saw him twice in Chicago and then in Austin. So that happened a lot. I want to catch up a little bit more before we get into the crypto, because you have another passion that I myself love. And that's with children's sports, right? You do some coaching. Tell me a little bit about what you've been up to since the last time we checked about the coaching and all that.
So one, I love bringing it. It is one of my absolute favorite things. So whenever we did boxing, mixed martial arts, and when I played football, even in high school, I've always had like a more of a head for the game than I have like raw athleticism. I'm a decent athlete. Like, I played varsity when I played football, and, I competed at an amateur level and did well, but was always capped. But I've always been a better coach and a better like analyst than I am personally an athlete. So I always, even, I'm a professional big brother and uncle. Like I've always had, it's just something that comes naturally to me. I like that dynamic. And so one of my best friends, his son is Garrett, and that's our quarterback. And Garrett was always just kind of I've got pictures of him at like 2 years old holding mitts while we're boxing and playing around. And he got a little too involved in football, and the kid is a phenom. He has professional quarterback training where he goes with D1 quarterbacks. He's now 9. He's had legitimate like pro D1 personal coaching since he was 7. And when we go, we look like the Kansas City Chiefs. Like we have 8 and 9-year-olds, and we throw the ball probably 50-60% of the time. We run spread. We have motions. We do read options. We shift line blocking. We have hot routes. We call everything off wristbands for 8 and 9-year-olds. It's absolute madness, and it's the most fun thing on the planet. It's really rewarding. We've been really lucky. We've had a lot of parents who've been like really involved to help us coach. And for a while, I had to miss Tuesday practice. We had Tuesday, Thursday, and then we had a quick practice before games on Saturday. And I was driving 3.5 hours one way up Thursday for coaching, and I would hang out and do streams and coach, and I'd be on the telegrams and chats on the drive there, and then coach, and then I'd drive back Saturday. And I was literally just going just to coach because it's so much fun.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Did you guys have a Super Bowl party, or who are you guys rooting for?
So his dad and his dad's brother, 2 of my best friends, they're huge Cowboys fans, and so was my mom. But I've always really just been a big fan of the game. So there's players I love all up and down every team. So I was cheering a bit for the Eagles. They were one of my big division bets. I wanted them to win the division early on. But again, like I love Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, the OC for the Chiefs is really great. I like L'Jarius Sneed and Sky Moore, some of the young guys on the Chiefs, but I really like the team building mechanic of the Eagles. So I was just happy for good football, and that was an extremely good football game. So
it was so good.
I was excited.
I don't often get to talk a little bit of football with my guests, so I had to take this opportunity.
Oh yeah,
because anybody who knows me knows that. I mean, I love me some American football, and I like yourself. Some of my friends, they're like, "Wait a minute, you're a little bit of a bandwagon hopper." But it's not that. It's that I really love athletes. I love players of the game. And so I kind of gravitate toward the player that I'm most interested in. And so you can always tell, like I do a fantasy football team with the Hexicans, right? Big K, Stakewell, a bunch of different Hexicans, Cabana, just a bunch of different Hexicans. And my first pick, everyone always judges me because I always go quarterback first. And everybody's like, no, you're supposed to go.
You gotta wait.
For me, it's like I don't even want to play the season if I can't have my favorite player. So Patrick Mahomes is my favorite player right now. I was on that Kansas City. I've been on Kansas City for like the last 3-4 years. So this was like the best year ever for me. I just barely lost fantasy, but next year.
Mahomes and those guys are really neat in that so some of those things that you can always pull out, like I'm one of those that like how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so some of the stuff that I really the reason that I'm so involved in American football is because there's such a chess match beforehand. And there's a lot of matchups and ways to attack and show people different things and deception. Like football is an extremely complicated game. It like the deeper you go, like it keeps going deep. Right. And that's not to knock other sports. But like tennis, it's relatively simple, and then it's just played at an unbelievable level by high-end athletes. Same thing with, football or soccer. But American football, there is chess match stuff going on. And some of the stuff the Chiefs do where they take it. So Mahomes would always be great, but the things they do specifically to take advantage of, some of the really unique stuff he does where he operates very much like a shortstop. He throws, off platform, cross body. They take advantage of that in really cool schematic ways. And that stuff gets me super involved. They do really neat things where they overload a side to break like 2 high coverages. Like what they did, those 2 wide open touchdowns, that's called tendency breakers. So the reason those 2 guys were so wide open is you show somebody something and you show them something and you get them to just dial in.
Right. Yeah.
So they pass that off. So what'll happen is that DB will slide, he'll yell to the safety, and they just bump the coverage over. So they change everyone's role, and then this guy goes back and they're not used to that. They're trying to slide over and adjust the roll so no one goes with them, and then just a dump off to a wide open player. So yeah, there's so much chess match that goes on. I love that stuff.
Oh, I can't wait to see some footage of you guys' next season, because you are clearly out there teaching some significant plays. Some kids.
We do jet orbit motions, and then we'll throw backside posts. Like it's ridiculous. Sometimes the refs, I've had refs just like die over laughing, look at us and like, what are y'all doing?
Right.
Sometimes the refs crack up. Every once in a while we'll run the score up a little bit. They won't let us pass in the second half. And I'm like, guys, we're the only ones that pass. Why are y'all mad? Come on, let us play.
Right.
But sometimes I've literally seen the refs just die laughing, just like, aren't y'all 8? What is all this?
Right.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's super fun. Yeah, I'll definitely send you guys some photos and watch some of our plays and stuff.
Absolutely. Can't wait. So I know the people here are like, wait a minute, this is KSB. This is Crypto Channel. What is going on here? So let's go ahead and steer into our topic of conversation for today, which is stable coins.
Mm-hmm.
So my strategy or my idea is that I want to be a resource for people that are learning, right? So many times you fall in love with your favorite streamer and then you watch their streams all the time, but the content gets so advanced that you get lost in the mix. So I just want to break it back down to the basics for people. So let's start here. What is a stable coin? Just your best definition.
So the idea is stability. And it doesn't mean that it has to be perfectly stable, but for people to do commerce, like to price things in something, you have to have units of measurement, right? So this goes all the way back to 12 inches being a foot. Well, a foot used to just be the foot. And they're like, well, hang on, everyone has a different size foot. It's like, so this literally goes back to like inches of measurement and being able to measure things. So the idea of stable coins is a stable measurement of value so that you can do different types of transactions. And because if you don't have stable coins, what you end up with in crypto is basically the most advanced barter system ever. It's how many chickens for a cow, how many Bitcoin for an ether, how many ether for a hex, how many hex for this. And you get essentially a very advanced barter system. And there's definitely pros to that. And that's why you still can transact that way. But stable coins give us these measurements, these tools to make sure that we can do commerce and price things. And so that the price of one thing doesn't affect the other price if we don't want it to. So again, Hart's Law, that's something that a lot of people in the community are getting more familiar with. So the idea of stable coins is that they are pegged to some value and that they have a variety of different ways that they try to maintain that. So in general, you'll usually see euro, you can see gold, you can see dollars. Dollars and euros are by far the most common. And there's a few kind of fringe cases, but in general, they're just trying to give everybody a unit of measurement so that we can do everything else.
Got it. So what are some of the more common stable coins that people are most familiar with?
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 at the top that are by far the most common. So USDC, which is issued by Circle. You have BUSD, which is loosely a combination between Binance and Paxos. You have DAI, which was issued by the MakerDAO. It was mostly decentralized. It's actually gotten pretty complicated. It was a relatively simple one, but it's actually probably the most complicated now. And then Tether, which is USDT. So those right there probably make up well over 60-70% of the market. I haven't double checked that recently, but the vast majority of stable coins will be those or derivatives of them.
And would all of these, in your example, be backed by the dollar?
So USDC is backed directly by dollars. And just as a little side note there, we'll say dollars. In general, when you start talking about massive amounts of value, they're usually held in a couple of different instruments, it's not just a Brinks truck full of cash. So USDC is 20% cash and 80% treasury bonds. And treasury bonds are, again, for the context of trying to make sure that everyone understands, it's just a couple of different forms of commercial paper where they have short time allocations where they take yield. So they are almost staking their value on the backside. But in general, USDC, USDT, BUSD, these big fiat-backed issuers are essentially backed by cash. There's a couple of little different instruments, but in general, for broad strokes, those are all backed by dollars.
Right. And so we hear this term peg a lot, right? And I know the first time that I heard it, someone was talking about being pegged to the price of silver. And so that just kind of like threw me off because I was like, okay, so you could essentially be pegged to anything. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So how does that work?
So when you have something that's pegged, it just means that it doesn't mean that it has to be. It means that it has a few different ways that it's trying to maintain that price. So if you want to have like dollars are not a stable price. Dollar values move up and down because it matters what you're comparing them to. So
Right.
even when we say inflation or any of these things, we're measuring over the cost, like inflation compared to what. So typically when we hear inflation in dollars, we're comparing that to like domestic goods. Like what can I buy? Like $5 was buying 30 eggs, now it's buying 15 eggs. Okay, well there's an inflation metric. So pegs are when something is designed and has these options of trying to stay attached to something. So if you say want to do price of silver, then you can add, usually the most common one is redemption or issuance. So if you have, say, this thing is supposed to be pegged to an ounce of silver and it goes below the price of silver, well, then what people are going to do is they're going to say, okay, well, give me my ounce of silver. And then that when they issue that, they're going to take that value. So they're going to arb it back down. So imagine if, say the price of silver is $100 an ounce. Okay. But I can buy a coin that is, it's like $1 a promissory note. So it means that it's the IOU, right? It's going to give me an ounce of silver if I go give this back. Well, if I can buy the IOU for $80, I'm going to buy the IOU, go get my silver, and then I'm going to sell the silver for $100. And then I'm going to go buy 1.25 of those. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to keep doing that over and over and over again until those prices get equal out. And that's called arbitrage. So a lot of times when you see something has a peg, it means that there's a redemption. So somebody's holding that value somewhere. So if I, for example, said, hey, I have a bunch of dollars. If you give me 80 pennies, I'll give you $1. You would just go get a bunch of pennies and you would keep doing it over and over and over again until that price made sense. So that's how arbitrage works. And it can get really complicated in big markets. And there's a few other ways, but in general, what you have from a peg is that there's an issuance, there's a collateral there. And anytime that price gets off, people will either redeem it back for that collateral or they'll mint more, again, depending on the protocol. So that's usually how you'll keep that peg. And again, you can peg it to anything.
Okay. So for a stable coin to be stable, does it have to be backed by something that also has the same value?
Not necessarily. So there's different ways you can do it, and you can get into quite a few different interesting models. So if you have, say, 1-to-1, that's like USDC, USDT. The way that model works is they have a guaranteed issuance of $1. So if you go with USDC coins, you can go to Circle and say, hey, here's my 100 USDC, give me my $100. And that's a 1-to-1 issuance. So they stay pegged the same way. And Circle has a different business model about how they make yield on the other side. If you use something like LUSD, which is liquidity, which is what liquid loans will be on a Pulse chain, or DAI, they use over collateral of things that are more volatile. So what you can do is, if you say you wanted to have a dollar-backed currency, like that's something that a lot of us remember back in the day. Dollars used to be backed by gold. Well, what you can do is, if the price of gold fluctuates, that means that you can't say you have $1,000 worth of gold, but the price moves. I can't put out $1,000 worth of currency, because if my gold goes down, now I don't have the gold for all those dollars. So what you do is you have to over collateralize. So if you have $1,000 worth of gold, then you can say back $500 worth of currency. And so that's what like LUSD or USDL will do. They'll hold more value of something that does fluctuate so that you can issue something stable. So so you can over collateralize as well. So it does. So what you're pegging to doesn't have to be stable. And in some reasons, that's the reason for the stable coin, is you have something really valuable, Bitcoin, Ether, gold, Pulse in the future, these things, right? These are things we want to hold the value, but we don't want to have to go, okay, what's the price of gold, and start chiseling off edges and shaving these things down, or going, yeah, I really like your shot glass there in the back. I'll give you, let me see the current price, 0.003692.93 ETH. Like, okay, that's impossible. But
Yeah.
but if it's like, hey, LUSD is $1, you want $2, we can basically move value of Ether between each other in a stable coin. So you can just tell me, yeah, the shot glass is $2, and we can exchange value that way, still using whatever that collateral is, but in a stable measurement so that it's easy to do commerce.
Right. Okay. So which out of the ones, because you mentioned LUSD, right? As it having like the idea that liquid loans will have in the future. Do you recommend that one currently as a stable coin to be used where we are now, pre-Pulse chain?
So the big thing is that with any of these assets, they have a little different risk profile, and you want to use the right tool for the right job. So if you're a really large player and you need huge amounts of liquidity, which I'm imagining is probably not the audience here, well, then different things make sense. USDC, USDT. If you need the ability to directly redeem, okay, well, then USDC, USDT can make sense. Different, again, if you have jurisdictional risk and regulations, and a lot of these things, those things can make sense. Or if you're operating on central exchanges, there's benefits to using whichever stable coin they have. Now, most of us are trying to avoid those things and do things in more censorship resistant ways and more decentralized ways. And if you're looking at, say, as you brought up earlier, hey, I want a DCA and I'm just not sure I want to move that value in just yet. So say you brought $500 into crypto, and every Friday for the next 5 weeks, I'm going to put in $100 worth of value into whatever project you find valuable. So that's where things like LUSD are really valuable, because you don't have admin key risk, you don't have jurisdiction risk, you don't have to trust that there's a big vault with dollars and commercial paper that's very difficult to understand. You can go and look at Liquidity and you can see the Ether on chain. Say, here's the collateral. Okay, this thing has value. I can go redeem it right now and get the Ether out if I want it. So if you're looking at transacting with people through crypto, if you're looking at wanting to keep value in crypto doesn't have these extra risk profiles, and you're going to DCA, that's where things like LUSD are extremely valuable, and that's where I'd recommend them the most.
Okay. So because I know that, like we said before, USDC is probably the most well-known, the most popular, right? And so yesterday, I want to say there was this tweet that was circulating, and I think it ended up, being revealed as being FUD. Correct. But I know just off of reading it to begin with, U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) has now ordered Circle to stop the sale of unregistered securities such as USDC. It definitely put some fear into me, right? Sure. I'm in, a bunch of different groups, and I see this person like, oh no, I got to dump my USDC, and somebody else's. Everybody just starts reading into the FUD to the point to where I'm like, okay, I think I might want to just go ahead and buy some more Hex or buy some more Hedron or something like that. Right. What is the real risk of holding something like USDC and some type of regulation changing to where, could it devalue your coins?
Whew. Boy, that's a simple question that is not simply answered. So the first part is, when it comes to the original tweet, from what we know, that's not the case now. So when those things come out from the SEC, those are called a Wells notice, but those are not required to be public. So whenever we get those, it's through a reporter, some insider, some kind of journalist, someone's putting that information out. It's not required to be public. Right. So it looks like the one for Circle was not true. The one against Paxos looks like it was true. But even in that context, it wasn't against everything that Paxos offers. And a few of these things, I'll just try to make sure that I get some of the particulars out. If people are more interested, every one of these little threads is pretty complicated, but at least now you'll have some framing. You can come back, yell at me or BlaKC HEXican, or do some own research. So Paxos offers 3 different stable coins. Okay. They offer BUSD, They offer a gold-backed stablecoin and then Paxos USD. So their Wells notice was only for BUSD. So it looks like that particular issue that's sort of gotten everybody ruffled is more issues with Binance. And there's been a few different issues about liquidity and how much backing was around BUSD, their banking partners. So there's always FUD with Binance. And part of that is because it has an extremely unique structure, and that in some ways it breaks down to being almost the most exotic sole proprietorship ever. I mean, CZ basically still runs that entire thing top to bottom. It's really so Binance is its own baby. It's always going to have stuff going on around it. So it doesn't mean that any of this particular stuff is not true, but just for newer users that are scared that the big player might break, there's pretty much always something going on with CZ and Binance. But where we're at in the US is that stable coins have some odd properties that if you go into a lot of jurisdictional rules around traditional markets, they overlap. And this is the problem with a lot of crypto. They start to, if you look at how they're used, they start to overlap with all kinds of definitions. And so you can look at stable coins the way we see them, and it's, hey, someone has $1, we're using $1. Like, why is this hard? Like, it doesn't even move in price. Like, what's the big deal? How is this so hard for you guys? But it's because their issuance is very similar to bearer bonds, which are an old instrument used for a variety of different things that had they were very simple and they got used in really exotic ways. So now they have limitations. Money market funds, it gets really off in the weeds on how much stable coins mimic other traditional instruments. So that's what all that jockeying is in the US. There's people trying to take market share because, again, holding all this value is very, very useful. Circle and those guys, they make hundreds of millions a quarter off of all the yield and interest from holding that paper for that value. So again, probably not the context for today, but it gets really deep. It's very interesting stuff. But the reason to hold one of these things or the other is quickly evolving. Circle, they're backed by BlackRock, and I really doubt they're going anywhere anytime soon. So I don't have immediately right now, I don't really have any like deep head concerns. I don't think that BlackRock and Circle can't pay their phone bill and their electric bill. I think they're probably okay. But you have jurisdictional risks. So, if you do something with Tornado Cash, if you do something non-OFAC compliant, you can get into some issues there. But in general, I think Circle is still fine to transact with. I personally prefer not to carry too much value in there, but I don't think it's going to break. So my issue are more wanting things to be decentralized, not worried about it breaking. And then LUSD is something that, again, if you're keeping value in crypto, LUSD is something that, one, you can get trustless yield off of by staking it. And again, you can verify all that collateral on chain. But for right now, just for a lot of new users, there's probably gonna be a lot of scary headlines around stable coins. And now the market has gotten to a point where maybe there's still some trepidation and some lows. But I think that in general, people should be a little more okay being risk on and just holding HEXhedron, whatever the ticker symbol is that you think is beneficial and that you believe in. So it's a long answer that there's a lot of crazy stuff that can instantly change. I don't think that USD, LUSD, any of those will have any immediate issues. So just be wary of those things and kind of understand what it is you're trying to accomplish there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I actually had no experience or really awareness of LUSD, but I did want to hold some stable, right? Because when you're in the space and you're, constantly looking at your deck screen or your watch list and you're seeing how the chart is moving, there are some times where, you want to make a buy, where you say, okay, this is the dip, this is a prime opportunity. And you don't always just want to rush your funds into it. But when you sit in Ethereum, then you're subject to the same, volatility that
you're still risk on, still move.
Oh, yeah, you're still risk on. And so to have that option of essentially risk off, you want that, but to also have the fear that I'm going to be sitting in these stables and then all of a sudden they're just going to have no value, then that's a little bit scarier. Right.
100%. And so that is, again, all these things, like we always use that term risk profile. It's like everything has some type of risk associated in some way. And that's why, again, if you're not looking at offboarding, if you don't have to go through an exchange or any of those problems, and you're just holding in crypto, doing DCA, or if you're using it as a way of taking profits and you just don't want to cash out yet, all of those things are where LUSD's profile to me is as good as it gets. There's no admin keys. There's no censorship issues there. You can verify everything on chain. And because they're not in a jurisdiction, you actually get a lot of layers of issues that can come from something like USDC, USDT. So for USDC, it's issued by Circle, but Circle doesn't hold the funds, BlaKRock does. And BlaKRock holds those funds in the US, and they're held in treasury bonds. So you end up with, well, if there's a problem with the bond market, which again, this is pretty heavy stuff. But if you had a problem there, you could be at risk. If BlaKRock had a problem, which again, those two things probably pretty unlikely, but Circle, along with basically jurisdictions. So you have quite a few layers there of where things can kind of go wrong when it comes to Liquidity at this point, who issues LUSD, or the code does. Ether's behind it. It's been operating for several years. You can verify everything on chain. There's always smart contract risk and crazy things can go on, but it's just there. It's there and working. So it doesn't mean that things can't break, but it's got a extremely narrow and low risk profile as of right now. So if people do get concerned and they're still going to keep funds in crypto, LUSD is a great way to do that without having to, stare at your wallet and see if Gensler is going to go argue with Fink or whatever, again, any of these things in the US. That's a great way of being safe.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to look into it. When it comes to the exit though, right now, you've been taking profits, you've been holding it in LUSD, but now you want the money back into your bank account. Are you swapping your LUSD for Ethereum and then sending it out off the network? Is that probably the play? Or do you just go like to the other stable? You go from LUSD to USDC?
So there's a variety of ways. It depends on your exchange and how you're off ramping now. There's more and more ways to do that. So I would encourage people to do a little exploration about what their real goals are and kind of, again, how they want to do that. So with centralized exchanges, they all have their own risk. I, in general, like Kraken. I've had a really good experiences with them when I've had to use them. I have a variety of other ways, again, from being so involved in the space to get funds on and off, and in ways that I wish were more accessible in general. But yeah, you can always just swap back. And so again, that's an example of the risk profile. So USDC, very simple. Get it on Coinbase. Once you're situated, get on Coinbase to my wallet, boom. So the thing is, if you're using that, you just don't want to have exposure to kind of the madness along the way. So you can hold it in Ether and LUSD and do everything. And then it's USDC into funds quickly.
Yeah. So I know another question that I think we've actually talked about before. I know that I've talked about it with J Money, but it was months and months ago when we were, we've been speculating on Pulse Chain for like 2 years
For a little while.
Yeah. But at one point we were having the discussion about possibly holding stable coins going into the fork. Will these coins have any value on Pulse Chain? Is that a strategy that you can use to be able to be ready to act as soon as Pulse Chain launches if you're trying to increase your Pulse or Pulse X back?
So there's a couple things. So the first one was, for a long time when we were when this thing kind of first started, we were still kind of end of the bull run, and we had a relatively short time frame. So it was, hold your hex, hold all the stuff you think is going to be valuable. What copies do you want, right? Like, hey, this is going to happen in three months. We're ready to go. It's like, well, I want Hex, I want Hedron, I want, any of these things. And it was cool. Buy them up, hold on to them. That made sense. And then as we get to some more of the bear market and we realize our time frame is longer, and that's when it's, hey, hold on. If you really get into some of the math of the copies, especially if you're looking at holding something so that you can get more PLSX or PLS, or again, depending on kind of how you think some pricing will work with, say, even PHEX or PHedron, basically, hey, I have the assets I like on ETH, but I want a heavier bag of that same asset on Pulse Chain. What do I do to get those things? So if you're going to act early, one of the things is you have liquidity. And then the other is that you have this math between what are the copies worth versus my principal. So once we got to that market, that's where a few of us were like, hey, this is now more of a bear market. You have price exposure. Maybe you just want to hold more and more stables so that you don't watch your value ride down as we're trying to play this timing game. So that's where a lot of that narrative came to stables. And then the other is, if you hold the stable, even if you lost some value on the copy, you basically were very, very protected on principle. So if you needed essentially help from someone on the outside, you should probably take, a very tight range of outcomes. You want to take the safer play, not risk principle, right? So the other part was, if you specifically Hex was the one that like everybody was drumming up, myself included. It was just, again, time frames, chains, moving goalpost. Hex has thin liquidity, and especially will likely have even a thinner liquidity for at least that very early, couple of days, weeks. Again, we'll see how things play out. Well, if everybody bought one thing and it has thin liquidity and it just launched, it's going to be super volatile. So if everybody was using Hex as this precursor to get into other things, then the value can tank. And again, if people are asking for help, they probably don't have the same level of nuance and understanding. We want to give them a safe option. So that's where, hey, hold stables, just protect your value. You get whatever you get out of the copy. Let's say you get 30, 40 cents on the dollar. You got 30, 40 cents on the dollar, but your principal's still all safe.
Right.
And so that's where that narrative moved. Now we're almost shifting back a little bit, and that being risk on is probably very beneficial. We're getting to the point where we may not have the same level of bear market for a length of time. So now you can go back to, hey, maybe I want to hold some of these other these other assets. I just had a good conversation with the CEO of TrustSwap, Jeff. So the trust tokens are going to be something that has adopted. There'll be all kinds of things that have, hey, maybe this is less likely to be adopted, but if it is, I can get it less expensive. It goes up. So you can play a little more games now with some of the actual tokens. But for sure, if people just don't understand the words coming out of my mouth, they're like, dude, I don't care. I just wanted some PLS and some PLSX. What is all this? It's perfectly fine to hold stables, knowing that, hey, you're not going to get dollar for dollar on the other side, but you quickly you get what you get, take that as a benefit, and then you can move that stable over and convert it into, your asset of choice. I still think that's a very, very sound play for many people to just say, hey, I've got $1,000, $1,500. I don't want to get cute. I take my copies. Maybe I get $200, $300, $500. Maybe you get half. Maybe you can get closer. Maybe it's 80, 90%. And then I'm going to move my copies over. I'm going to trust Impulse and PLSX to go do number go up stuff. And I don't want to fumble. I'm willing to just say, hey, I didn't get every inch, but I got value into these projects and let them go do their thing.
Right. So I know that USDC has admin keys, right? So what is the likeliness or possibility that the copied USDC on Pulse Chain, they'll just say, no, we don't want it active over here, and just totally invalidate all those coins?
So I think it is pretty low. They haven't really taken that type of action before with like eFair and ETHW and a few of those things. Where it might be a little different with us in Pulse Chain is that, I don't know if you notice, some of our community are pretty creative and pretty smart guys, and they've had time to think about stuff. And you can't let our community sit around and think that. They start getting too creative. They get excessive. So where there can be some differences with us, that I still think the answer is low, but I just think it's higher than what some might think, is because if you start doing things where you're pairing the copies over to wrapped USDC that gets brought over, or if people start trying to bring that value back over to ETH, and essentially if there are some ways where if we start to get, I say we being the whole ecosystem, if the ecosystem tries to get too cute, we might be at a slightly higher risk than what you would just take looking at the market. But I still think it's pretty low that it'll be invalidated. I just think that, again, it's not redeemable. They're not backed by dollars. So their value will just get tanked very quickly.
Right. But I guess even in this situation, you would still probably prefer to hold LUSD, that its value will probably maintain a little bit better. Because I was going to ask you, do you have a preference over DAI, USDT, USDC? But I'm assuming that you're probably leaning toward LUSD.
So here's another really wild one. So LUSD and DAI also have a interesting issue in which their value will likely not stay pegged as well. And that's that because of the supply difference in ether and pulse.
Mm-hmm.
So where one ether is worth, I don't know, $1,500, $1,600, whatever it is right now, that'll be replaced by one pulse, which has 1,000,000 times the supply. So that collateral will just instantly break that contract. And the same kind of issues with DAI because it's backed by USDC, USDT, Treasury, all these things. So the collaterals on all those stables won't function. So where there is an advantage for USDC and USDT is that their liquidity is very, very thick. So they'll probably hold on some of that price as it falls down and people get out of it quickly. It'll probably hold on a little better. But you get into a little bit of a play where if everybody thinks USDC is the play, they all come wreck that liquidity. Whereas if you take the kind of oddball, you might be able to get a bigger piece of a smaller pie. So there's a few ways you can go throughout it. In general, I think that you either hold on to things that you think will be valuable on both sides, and you just do not play the early game. You say, "Hey, I think Hex is the greatest thing that ever happened to the face of the world. RH is my hero. I'm going to hold Hex. I'm not doing anything with it. It'll be valuable on Pulse on Pulse. Cool, fine, hold on to it. It's in if you're trying to be aggressive and get into Pulse or PLSX or again to buy PHEX on that side, that's where stables and some of these other strategies start to be more impactful. But again, you can always kind of decide, do I want to try to get into these things? Or if you're, kind of a Hexican first, do you just want to hold Hedron and Hex and just say, hey, I'm going to skip any of the risk in the middle and I'm just going to hold stuff and delay gratification and I'll be rich eventually. So you have those options, but I always like to recommend people, you can always do less. You don't have to jump in, do crazy stuff. You can always just hold on those assets and let them do their thing.
Right. So I know that you also work with the Liquid Loans team, right? And so we have some interesting things that we'll have access to once Pulse Chain actually drops. What is the project or the stablecoin that Liquid Loans is working on? What will we have to look forward to once Pulse Chain is here?
Absolutely. So it's USDL, which is, again, it's a fork of Liquidity. So very, very, very similar code, a few tweaks just to make things work on Pulse Chain. And USDL works the same way that Liquidity does. So people are able to collateralize. They lock up a lot of Pulse, and then they can issue the stablecoin USDL. So USDL, the same way we're referring to earlier with those collateral examples, you can lock up $100,000 worth of PLS, and then you can mint those stable coins. And USDL is pegged to the dollar, but it's pegged to $1 worth of Pulse. So it doesn't redeem for $1. There's no bank. There's no treasury bonds. None of that sort of craziness we referred to earlier. It's you take it, you can redeem it back for your Pulse, and that's how it maintains that stability. So USDL is a way of just giving us even measurements of the value of our PLS.
Are they expecting that USDL will be available pretty soon after launch, or we're going to have to wait through some of that volatile period in the beginning?
We will give it just a bit of a delay. So it'll likely be 30, 60-day range, which has a couple of advantages. One is it lets me and the rest of the team focus on the community around launch. So rather than me having to go do all the stuff that I need to do when we launch, I can be front and center and doing all that admin stuff and helping out the community. So I'm very actually happy about just naturally how that laid out, because that stuff always means a lot to me. The other is that there's time for the Oracle and some of that pricing data to get nice and secure, and then the volatility of the price itself and liquidity pool. So there's a few things that you need to have a little weight behind them to make sure that everything about the protocol is as safe as it can possibly be. Because once we launch, there's no admin keys, there's no DAO, there's no governance. So it's our code until the second it goes to the contract, and then that's it. It is no longer ours. It's got a name on it. Anyone can build a front end. Multiple teams are building front ends. It's not ours anymore. It's the community. It's the contract. It's decentralized. Anybody can collateral. Anybody can mint. Anybody can stake. It is not ours anymore, which is exactly how you want those things. So we have to give it just a little bit of seasoning time on a few different metrics so that all of those things are nice and safe. And then it is the communities. That's it. Everyone can mint. No one can stop you. It's completely decentralized after that.
Nice. So I got one more question that's completely speculative, but it's the question that everybody wants to know, right?
Sure.
When pulse chain?
Oh man. So I can give you another guess and be wrong for the 45th time, I guess, like everyone. So I mean, again, it looks like we'll have testnet v3 very soon. I know that we're, especially for newer users, getting a lot of really difficult updates. All those things that you're seeing from RH in the community are about the nodes that actually keep up with all the data on blockchains. So blockchains are just blocks of information. And so these things being able to read that data and then give it to other applications and dApps and front ends, all the stuff that we actually use on the front end is really important. And believe me, and actually being on the back end and designing and helping build some of these things, there's just so much stuff. Like it's like stuff. There's just always a lot going on with blockchains to get these things right. But it looks like we should have that out here soon. I'm hoping next 30, 60 days. And a few of the comments from some of the devs are that there's really that there's a couple of things that I thought were kind of insightful. One, that there's no real plans for another testnet, which whenever you look at essentially every other layer one, they have the actual main net, and then they still have test nets. We just never care because they're live and we're just out doing stuff with real money, right? But there's half a dozen different test nets for Ethereum. So one of the things that was in sort of my purview was, hey, V3 will come out. It's the last test. They'll check, go through parameters. Maybe they make a few minor tweaks, nothing that's extremely difficult, but everything works great. But you move a few numbers around, and then you launch another test net, not for the idea of testing, but hey, this is the new long-term test net that runs in parallel with the chain. So like this is where, as people come on to develop more things in the future or try things out, you do it on the test net. As of right now, there's not a plan for another one, and that V3 will be the one that runs in parallel. So again, this is all inference, and this is all the plan as of now, is that would tell me they have a very high degree of confidence that they're not going to have any major issues once they launch, and that also that they're very, very confident on basically the design decisions. So if they don't think there's another testnet that they're going to relaunch it, again, that's a lot of testing, a lot of confidence, and that they'll put this up. We go through, test everything. Everything's grandiose. Everybody comes in, starts beating it up, trying to see if they can shake things out, find edge cases, get some data. And then after that, we're off and running. So those two things give you good confidence that we should be up relatively soon, and that there shouldn't be a crazy length of time after the test net. But I've also pretty much said that before. And as always, it's always just kind of a moving goalpost on where we're at.
Absolutely. I hear you 100%. My team wrapped a pulse chain car in September of 2021, thinking that pulse chain was just right around the corner. So
might need a new wrap. Might be getting wore out.
Right. Absolutely. At this point, we might be wrapping pulse Doge cars. I don't know. But yeah, that was very informative. I definitely learned a lot about stable coins, especially with LUSD. I'm definitely going to go and do some research and look into that, because that is a stable coin that I was totally unfamiliar with. There's one more topic that I wanted to talk to you about before we wrap up here, and that is, let me bring up the screen share, ETH Denver. And the reason why I want to talk to you about it is because you are the only reason that I even know that it exists. Right? I saw
very cool
that you put up, and it was very interesting to me, because I do have a passion for networking, for getting out there and meeting other builders and creators in the space. So can you tell us a little bit about what this ETH Denver is, why you chose to go, and whatever else you'd like to share?
Yeah. So the first part is exactly what you said, is that there's just networking goals, and things are very different in person. As you said, we met a couple of times, and like that just, it gives us an entirely different relationship going forward, and confidence, and just connectivity with everyone else. So those things are still really, really important. So the first part is just, I wanted Pulse Chain to have a presence. I have changed some of the things that I've been doing recently to make sure that I'm more valuable to the chain. So you know, the podcast stuff, doing a lot of the extra things on the blog side, you know, using my face on all my handles rather than my avatar. I already missed my WaLLrus, by the way. So doing all those things is about having exposure and trying to basically reach out to new audiences and new markets. So that's part of the reason I'll go out there. There's a couple of different communities that I've already wanted to go out there and hang out with. I also just like Denver, so it's not too difficult to get up there. I'm also volunteering. I'm going to be doing some mentorship there and helping out with some new teams that are looking at building. So just trying to basically be of service and make sure that people see what we're doing here. So you can very quickly become a silo. But when you're out there doing work for other communities and people see you out front and they've seen what the community is doing in the larger community, it gives you a lot different level, a very, very different level of just connectivity and people realizing that what you're doing is valuable. So that's a really good one. I'm also going to be at there's another one in Vegas at the beginning of May, the Breathe convention. There's a big Web3 one. I know some of the guys that are putting that on, so I'll be out there as well speaking. So for ETH Denver, again, my big goal was there's a couple of players that are going to be out there specifically that I wanted to have some face-to-face time with about getting them over to Pulse Chain. And then the other part was, you know, again, doing some volunteering on the mentor side.
Nice. So I thought something was really interesting about it. When I went to go and look for the tickets, I saw that there was like a application process because of, I guess this is an event that has always been free. And so in order to get in, you have to apply. Did you have to apply or did you have like a connection that got you in? How did that process work?
I did have some people that kind of like signed on there. I don't know that I needed it anyway. When I filled out the application, it was pretty simple. I don't know that it's particularly, I think it's more about just have almost the security theater a little bit. Yeah. I think it's a little bit of just theater in a positive way. I think if they just say there's an application process, then people find it a little more valuable and helps keep out some of the noise. So I'm not that familiar with some of the parts of that event, but I didn't have any issues with it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think any opportunity to go and to show up for Hex, for Pulse Chain, for whatever you're representing is great exposure. I love that this year, Maddie has decided to do his on like his in-person meetup at the Bitcoin conference.
Yeah.
You know, why not bring big numbers, you know, to a space where there's already crypto enthusiasts, right? And I think people forget that Hex is on Ethereum, right? So we have just as much of a place, you know, being at an Ethereum conference,
absolutely,
as anywhere else. I think that does wonderful things for Hex and for the brand as a whole. So I'm definitely looking at when we do get back on tour for Pulse Chain, to be able to make our schedule to where we can hit some of these larger events, as opposed to just creating events for ourselves, but instead go and be seen in the public and network. So
yeah, and there's obviously I'm a part of the LL team. A huge part of sort of my discussions with the team and coming on board and a lot of just a lot of how all those kind of commercial side of things went was, one, I'm relatively outspoken. I'm pretty even keel, but if I got something to say, I'm going to say it. And so that was part of it, was that, you know, naturally I've been a huge fan of everything they've been doing since the beginning. I'd been on streams and talked, but some of it was like, I'm not for sale like that. If there's something that is, a negative topic, or we have whatever it is, like I'm just going to speak on it how I speak on it. So of course, I do have, obviously there's associations and ties, and a lot went into making sure that we were, very, very similar on values, so that wasn't a problem. But that was a big part. And the other was that, like, Pulse Chain is what got me in the community. Like, I've been in crypto for longer than that, but the forward facing person who's involved and trying to educate and do speaking, that was because I wanted to be a part of Pulse Chain, where there was a layer one where people were building cool stuff and the community was very tight and there was an ethos. So Pulse Chain was why I was here, and that wasn't changing. And so even some of the branding stuff, like you can tell that I work for Liquid Loans and I've got my double L's and that cool stuff, but most of what I speak on is still the stuff that I spoke on even before I got there. And So if somebody else is building something cool, or there's a way to connect and build value, not being a poster board or a shill for LL was important. So that one, just that's how I carry myself, and then also like that's how I can be effective in the community. And so these are the kinds of events and why that stuff's important to go out there. And the best thing that we can do for any individual Pulse Chain project is make sure that Pulse Chain is very well thought of and well received. And so a lot of the things that I've been doing are just almost just being productive for the chain as a whole.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a chain. We don't want a ghost chain. We need builders. We need people. We need mass adoption. So like I said before, kudos to you for getting out there, putting your face out there and doing the work, because, you know, you may be a part of the Liquid Loans team, but as Pulse Chain, you know, there is no one paying you for your promotion of Pulse Chain. Richard Hart is not airdropping anybody any marketing funds. This is just something that you do because of your conviction, your belief in the system, and the change that it can create in the world in years to come. So
Absolutely.
thank you for that work. I know there was one thing that you wanted to share with the audience as far as increasing their security. If you want to go ahead and do that, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that I've been playing around with a few things, but especially since the traveling, there's a lot of us that are getting more and more nomadic. And one of the things to be careful about is on the security of devices. So while, again, as you talked about earlier, hardware wallets, dedicated devices are an absolute must, there's still other data, whether it's communications or like I still have a hot wallet that's on my phone. It just carries a very, very small amount of value that I use to transact for all kinds of small stuff. So something that I hadn't really seen brought up, and then luckily my beautiful fiance is in IT and she's smarter than I am. It's odd that I'm the crypto guy. Like I'm not even the smartest. I'm not even the smartest one in my own house. It's ridiculous. It's embarrassing. So these are adapters that you can put onto, and I'll show them the camera in just a second, that you can put on, and they block the data ports on a USB. So you can go and plug in any device that you're concerned about the data, but especially anything that you have a wallet on, even if it's a small amount of value when you're traveling, airports, any of these things. These are very inexpensive. And what it is on the male USB side, there's 4 ports in there. The inner 2 are for data and the outer 2 are for power. And this just does not even have the data port. So what they have is USB-C or female USB ends on them. And then you just basically can plug in your power cables into these. And then that way you don't have to worry about any data transfer or skimmers or any of that sort of sophisticated stuff at these large areas. Again, particularly airports or even Airbnbs, hotels, things like that, where there's a lot of those transactions. And people are getting smarter and smarter and realizing that credit card fraud is difficult and that people will come get you, but stealing crypto is big business. So this is a very simple thing, especially for those of us that travel a lot, especially internationally, things like that. This is simple insurance, just something that I brought up, and I just want to, I'll probably bring it up over and over for the people that check me out on streams, just until it comes kind of part of the security profile and the ethos, and then I'll quit bringing them up. But until then, I'll probably be carrying these and trying to show them around. They're just very inexpensive, and something that costs you a couple bucks might save you a lot of money.
Do you find those on Amazon?
Yeah, you can order them basically anywhere. This is not like the Trezor, where I don't think there's near as much concern about, you know, trying to order something that sophisticated, particularly. Again, this is just cheap insurance for people who travel a lot. And again, depending on what you have, just mostly it's for the data. Again, a lot of the communication, just communicating with teams and all that type of stuff. So they're just, again, they're a good tool, and adding some of those, adding things that slow you down typically just make you more conscientious. So if you're using these, whatever they block is important. And then just the fact that you thought about them, that you use them, that type of just kind of care throughout is usually what helps. Same thing with hardware wallets in a lot of ways. So they're just cheap insurance, something to recommend for travelers.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I do not want to hold you. I know that you are a very, very busy man. I caught you in spaces just this morning. So I know you are always out there, you know, giving your knowledge to the people. If you want to just share just a last little bit about like where people can follow up with you, or if you're streaming or your podcast, anything like that, just feel free to go ahead and let them know where we can catch you.
For sure. So yeah, as I've tried to actually like do more content, it's actually I have to remember to tell people that stuff's out there. It's always so much easier when I was just going on everybody's streams and just kind of like putting it out there and then saying bye guys. But now I actually got to like remember. I remember one of the first streams I did, someone was like, what's your Twitter handle? And I was like, I honestly don't know. I had to literally look it up because I didn't even know what it was. And I went and changed it so I would remember. So it's WaLLrus Official, and the WaLLrus is always with 2 L's. So WaLLrus Official on Twitter. The podcast, there's 1 episode on there now. I actually just recorded the other one. I've got a couple of cool ones coming up here very shortly. So the podcast doesn't have a time on it. It's not regimented. It's just trying to grab guests that I think can add a lot of value, especially that have outside reach of the community. So there's a one on there with Jack Levin right now. And I've got another one coming up real quick. Won't drop the names. We'll have some teasers out very shortly. And then on streams, so Liquid Loans, we have the liquidloans.io. You can check out the project. Liquid Loans, the YouTube channel. So anywhere you see Liquid Loans, if you want to get in touch, you can always get a hold of me through any of those channels. And then WaLLrus Official on Twitter, and the same thing on Telegram. So anywhere anyone needs me, have DMs. I try to answer as much as I can. Sometimes it takes me a couple of days. And as always, I get hit with a ton of stuff. So especially if I don't follow you on whatever the platform is, don't be afraid to just ping me a couple times just to make sure I answer. I try to get to everyone if I can.
Yeah. You're very responsive. I really appreciate that about you. I have a couple of updates for you guys on the Hex Cruise. I just want to say thank you, WaLLrus, for joining me here today. I found that conversation very delightful. If you want, you can, head on out if you want, or you can stick around for my Hex Cruise updates. Completely up to you.
Go.
I definitely appreciate you being here. For all of you guys in the audience that have questions about the Hex Cruise, we have passed over the February 8th deadline. So all inventory that is left is now back into the system. So if you have been on the site in the past couple of days, you were seeing a whole lot of sold outs. But yes, like I thought, more rooms did become available. Now there are rooms back available in pretty much all the categories. But if you've been watching for a while, then you can definitely see how these prices have changed. I do not know whether or not there will be some last minute sales. If you cruise a lot, sometimes you can find some really good rates towards that last month. But just looking at the inventory of this ship, there are not a lot of rooms in any category. So I do think that this selling will sell out. So if you really want to be on this cruise, then I would just go ahead and book now. But if you want to play the game, then you can definitely keep checking back to see if those prices go down any. One more thing. So that's hexcruise.com if you want to go and check out that information. The last thing is this is our Hex Cruise t-shirt. Let me make sure you guys can see that.
Oh, that's slick.
Yeah. It was designed by WaLLrus. He is a Hexican in the community. You guys might have heard of his brand. It's 369 on Twitter. They are making some really nice premium merch on their website, so you can go and check them out. But I just wanted to give him a shout out because he has done an amazing job, not only designing our Hex Cruise t-shirt, but he is also designing a Hex Cruise poster that will be available on the cruise and possibly before. Him, Freddie, Quotes, and myself have been collaborating on that project. So as soon as we have more information and the design finalized for that, then I'll bring them on the show so that you guys can see what's going on there. Tomorrow, you guys know I stream every day, same time, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Tomorrow, like I mentioned earlier in the stream, I will have Abid Hex here with me today. The only reason why we may have to shoot the time back is if my Trezor doesn't arrive on time. Damn that Trezor.io not having that good old Prime shipping. But yes, no matter what, we will we will try and get that done tomorrow. Even if we just have to set up one of Abid's Trezor devices, we will likely get that stream done. So that's pretty much it on my side. Thank you again, WaLLrus, for being here with me today. I appreciate you guys all for being in the chat. And that is all. See you next time.
No,